Good day to all the fellow Mandela Washington Fellows, alumni, and to all the 2021 participants and alternates to the Mandela Washington Fellowship Program. Welcome to this panel, which is going to be discussing identifying market needs and gaps and actually building our businesses and your business in a time of crisis. I'm happy to introduce these two lovely ladies who are joining us on the panel. We have Maria Luisa Boyce, who is the Vice President of Public Affairs at UPS International. And we also have Susie Zimmerman. She is the manager in charge of public affairs for Africa and the region. My name is Cheurombo Pswarayi. I am a fellow and I was at Drake University in 2019 in the Leadership in Business track. You can just look on for our bios, which are just below this. The objective of this conversation is to tap into the knowledge and expertise of these two ladies from UPS, stemming from their experience of the company, the global company that is UPS, and what we want to try and seek and find out from them is how we can actually use the crisis to identify market needs and to the growth of our businesses as entrepreneurs. We have a few minutes, so we'll get right into it. So thank you, ladies, for joining us. I'm super, super excited. If you can't tell already, I'm super excited. And I'll start with you, Maria Luisa. Can you possibly, to set the stage for us, can you tell us about UPS, its presence worldwide, and a bit of your global networks?
Of course, Cheo. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having us. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be able to have this conversation. UPS is a company where we have presence in over 220 countries and territories. And to put it into perspective, we move on a daily basis 3% of the world's GDP in our network. And that has really given us, as you may imagine, a good overview of how we're seeing supply chain movement around the globe. We're also the largest, that's in the top 5 user of sea containers, the third largest air cargo airline in the world. And so as we look at all the different connections and how you move trade from a business perspective, we have been able to see impacts and the movement of cargo. And so I know we're going to talk more about other areas, but that's maybe to give an overview of UPS from a transportation perspective.
Okay, interesting. So you mentioned that the number of countries worldwide that you're in, that you're servicing, and that you're operating in. How has the coronavirus impacted your networks and your ability to serve those customers?
Cheo, and that's a great question. I think one of the first things that we had to do, and probably your fellow colleagues will appreciate this as business people, we first had to make certain and do an assessment of the safety of our employees. That was the first, as the virus has started. And if you can imagine, of course, it started first in Asia, and then it moved through different parts of the world. And so our network was being impacted at different paces. And understanding what the virus was and how it transmitted for us was very important. Safety first, making certain that we were taking care of our employees. The second part that was a big impact for the movement of cargo was a twofold approach. One, how are governments reacting to the management of cargo and the impact of how to manage the virus. And the second one was understanding that a lot of cargo, for example, if we talk from the air perspective, a lot of cargo also move through the bellies of passenger planes. And when passenger planes stop flying, that was an impact on the capacity, right, for air. And so we definitely saw we needed to adjust and make certain that once we took care of the safety of our employees on that second piece, understand and be able to sit with governments and share best practices for the movement of cargo, and then understand what was the supply and the capacity impact. Immediately after we were doing the assessment, also at the same time as we were working with governments, our industry was identified as a industry that was necessary to keep moving. And so that was another aspect that made a difference and helped us to keep moving cargo and moving healthcare products.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to you on that one, on when actually you were now classified as essential services. But I'll just go to Susie for now. You're the one who is, directly involved with Africa and the region, which includes Africa. Can you tell us about how specifically, UPS's footprint has been affected by the pandemic in Africa, and what its footprint has been already in Africa?
Sure. So in terms of our footprint in Africa, so we operate in 50 countries and territories across Africa, but we have wholly owned operations in 3 countries. That's Morocco, Nigeria, and South Africa. In other countries, we use what we call authorized service contractors, or ASCs, which are other companies, probably local, who have their own assets that work with us, and we have a contract with them to either help us with last mile delivery in country or feed volume into our network first mile that we can deliver internationally. So that's our footprint. You might, some of the fellows that are watching this might recognize our brand, some may not, but we probably have a relationship in their country with a local service provider. So in terms of the pandemic's impact on our business in Africa, as Maria Luisa is saying, this essential services designation was critical. And what we saw across all of this territory was very piecemeal approaches by different governments on how they wanted to tackle the spread of the virus. And so where it's already sometimes difficult because of customs procedures or outdated trade facilitation measures to move products into a country, we were now faced with shorter, smaller numbers of personnel at the border processing parcels, or the inability to move products within our vehicles because of lockdowns, or now what we're seeing more of is pedestrianized zones that delivery vehicles can't even access because they want to expand space for people to be able to walk. And so it was very much a process to tackle each of these pieces individually. One example is in one country, we were not allowed to clear through customs non-essential products. And sometimes, what is essential is not always clear, right? So it could be a label maker for a machine that's creating something essential, or somebody's reading glasses so that they can continue to work from home. So once we enable the clearance of all products, not just what is seen as essential, then we weren't able to transport all products. We could only transport essentials. So all that volume is building up at the border. And then we could finally move it to our warehouses for storage there, but then we couldn't deliver them. So each piece is a sort of a separate battle. And I think this is a huge opportunity for lessons learned for governments, and an opportunity to all come together and harmonize how they treat situations like this going forward.
Interesting. Yeah. And in addition to attempting to consider the business as it is, how has UPS been working with the government and their own initiatives to, support relief and recovery efforts? How has that been going?
So, Cheo, thank you so much for the question. It has been very interesting. I think when I was talking a little bit about UPS, there's different elements that came to the table that helped us adapt and better understand what was the situation. There's also the UPS Foundation, that is another part, of course, of UPS. I call it the heart also of UPS, which we started to look at, okay, how do we best respond and support? And In terms of the systems and analysis, Chair, we have also a large brokerage business that was able to start assessing and analyzing around the world what were the areas that we needed to work, how do we communicate with governments, and be able to help and sit at the table to help identify best practices. We were able to deliver everywhere. In some parts slower, and there were more concerns, slowdowns, because of course when there were lockdowns in different countries. But we are very proud to say that we're able to continue moving the cargo. So for us, identifying best practices and be able to sit with the governments, that helped us, because we shared information and how to best activate. The second part that was very important for us as a business too was from the UPS Foundation, to make certain that how do we support all the communities around us. And so the UPS Foundation also started participating and identifying projects and areas where they could invest and help the community through the partners that the foundation has. And I think one last piece that I think very important to share was how were we communicating with our customers, because as you can imagine, and as you're going through all of this, also the businesses were impacted very much, especially small and medium and small and nano businesses and micro businesses were very much impacted and disrupted. And so that was something that we wanted to make certain constant communication and update on what was needed for the businesses, how to adapt, and what advices do we share. And I know I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but I think communication became very important so that we can facilitate the continued movement of trade.
And of course, if I can add just a little piece to that, the other consideration, so there's the continuing our operations, it's communicating with our customers, but then also internally with our folks. So, making sure that our, if our UPS browntail airplanes are still flying into an airport, then what happens with the crew members and the pilots? Are they going to be tested? Can they get the proper rest they need at designated hotels that are going to be essentially cut off from the rest of the population? How do we make sure that our drivers can access the facility if only certain people are allowed to be out and about during lockdowns? Do they have a special document or something to allow them to pass? So that's another consideration, making sure that all of our folks are properly equipped with personal protective equipment and their social distancing in our facilities. So there's a lot of different layers to this and how we help to keep the supply chain moving with all these different parameters.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Maria-Luisa you mentioned the UPS Foundation. So I'm wondering, as a business owner in Zimbabwe, an entrepreneur, how does information about such foundations get to us? Is it part of the roles of which you guys have in public affairs? What is your role in public affairs? And can you share with us how that function actually plays into global supply chains? How you protect movement of my goods as an exporter or as an importer?
Thank you. Yes, definitely. We are, so that foundation, we work very closely with the foundation, who has different projects that we work on and they have different partners. So for example, the foundation has supported more than $6 million in donations to the United Nations agencies, humanitarian relief partners, and community-based nonprofit and international non-government organizations. And they have, through their partners, we are able to provide that support to the community. To your question specifically of how public affairs works together, we work very closely together in terms of help implement and identify some of the projects. And I know we're going to talk about our Women Exporter program later on. But I also think for us, it's important we communicate through our partners on the ground, and that's how we were able to provide more of that information. We don't like to highlight that much all the support that we're given, which we like to do through our partners, so we're able to take full advantage of it. Susie?
Okay.
Right. And so in terms of public affairs, just so that the fellows that are watching this have a better sense of what Maria Luisa and I do, because I think sometimes public affairs doesn't really indicate what our job is. So we are the advocacy arm of UPS. So we're the ones who are out there with the relationships with government stakeholders, trade associations, industry groups, international organizations, looking out for the interests of both the company and of course our customers, and making sure that we are able to serve them in the best way. So that's why, Maria Luisa and myself, we were working throughout the pandemic, leveraging these conversations that we have going to make sure that that the company can continue operating as it needed to. Our folks who are in operations are sort of nose to the grindstone. They want to keep their shipments going, but they're not necessarily with the macro picture of, how do we communicate the needs of the company and our customers, especially when it comes to sort of economic resiliency and recovery. Making that case to governments about why we should be considered essential, or why it's important that we move shipments swiftly through customs clearance. So we're the ones that help to make that case. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. You're very important. You're a very important piece of the puzzle. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
I like to think so.
I've heard, and you've hinted on it, on that UPS does a lot in the area of helping small businesses, and entrepreneurs. So, would you be able to give us more information on that? It's really particularly of interest to the business owners listening into
Of
this.
course, definitely. Thank you so much for the question. Small businesses are the heart of the economies around the globe. And one of the areas that we have focused as a company is how are we able to enable small businesses around the globe to enter international trade and export more? And we started our approach first 2 years ago when we launched a women exporter program in partnership with the UPS Foundation to enable women entrepreneurs to be part of international trade. And this became part of our approach in general to all small businesses and women entrepreneurs on identifying 3 areas that we saw were very much needed. One was to provide capacity building, and that was the need to provide small businesses with the information that they need to better frame the question on how to export, right? And understanding e-commerce and exporting, etc. The second one was how to help them do market access and how to connect with other markets, how to be able to do it in an affordable way so that they can grow their business. And the third area that we continue to focus was identifying regulations, and that's to Susie's point that we're the advocacy arm. What were the regulations that were impeding or that we could identify needed to be able to enable small businesses to export? And so we have been working on that for the past 3 years, and then the pandemic happened. And I think what was very interesting to see show is that during the pandemic, definitely there was a shift of the behavior of the consumer that we saw, and we saw the emergence or the growth of e-commerce, and that was because the consumer, of course, now was buying all online. We definitely saw double-digit growth from last year in terms of people using e-commerce, and that has also pushed forward for us. How do we continue to bring more capacity building in this area, and then to adapt our products that are affordable and make sense for our small businesses? And so we started more education webinar series through the pandemic, leveraging and understanding what does e-commerce mean and how do you connect not only that you get the customer, but how do you make your good arrive to that customer. And definitely we saw an opportunity for exports because many of the consumers, I think we were talking about it earlier, were impacted, and let it be the US, China, EU, etc. They were very much impacted, and there were more opportunities to be able to sell online. So those were some of the things that we're doing with the small businesses as we continue to identify what are the challenges that they're facing in some countries that they're going right now through the pandemic and post-pandemic, right? And so we're working on this process.
Okay, all right, thank you. And from your business, from your women, you said it's called the Women Exporters Program.
Yes.
Have you had any lessons learned? What UPS has learned specifically for women entrepreneurs doing business, doing export business? What hints and tips can you just like off the top of your head give us?
Yes. So two nuggets. One is and understanding through the pandemic and just in general on the program, but the first one is the need for capacity in terms of small businesses really need to understand their product, their customer, and the impacts that they have, because we saw many times that the small businesses were interested in exporting and they were ready to do it, and they did not do their homework on understanding better if their product needed a special license, or where they were going that the customer was used to returning, and then who covers the cost of the return, right? So I think that's one nugget in terms of the need to do your homework and train better, understanding if you're going to go into exporting. The second one, for us that was very interesting, has been learning how to better package your goods when you're sending it. Then the need to understand how to better package what you're going to send, because that makes a difference in price, in weight, and going through customs and making it to the destination. So I think those will be the two nuggets that will come to my mind from that perspective, that keep coming up in our seminars and webinars.
Okay, oh, thank you for that. So I'm particularly interested in the healthcare industry, and this crisis we're experiencing at the moment is also directly affected by healthcare. So, Susie, what are some of the innovative delivery mechanisms or solutions that UPS has, have underway in Africa?
So one of my favorite examples to talk about is our drone project in both Rwanda and Ghana. So that started in May of 2016, working with the Rwandan Ministry of Health, Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and a company called Zipline, a California-based drone manufacturer. And the reason why we targeted Rwanda initially is because, for instance, postpartum hemorrhaging is a big cause of maternal death. And with remote villages and the hilly terrain in Rwanda, and in certain seasons the roads are impassable. This is a way for us to specifically convey blood transfusions to clinics in these villages to help save a mother's life. And this is, of course, being extended to other critical medications and vaccines. We expanded this to Ghana. Another great example of our healthcare innovation is ensuring the safe cold storage of vaccines and moving them in temperature-controlled conveyance by truck, motorcycle, and boat. This is something that we're doing in Uganda in partnership with the Ministry of Health there, working with more than 150 clinics around Kampala. And because of how successful it's been, in ensuring the shelf life of these critical vaccines that require a temperature-sensitive environment, we're going to, of course, expand this to other parts of the country. And this will then inform how we might work with a potential COVID-19 vaccine whenever that's available, and our capacity for sharing that with different communities. We've also been involved in the in PEPFAR for moving critical vaccines and medications around different parts of the world. And of course, we're also involved in supporting the Ebola crisis. When that emerged in Africa, it was specifically the UPS Foundation. They activated funding and logistical support for Ebola relief efforts. So this is something that UPS is very much involved in, of course, in other parts of the world to other extents as well. But healthcare is a big focus area for us, and we're always coming up with innovative ways to make sure that we are getting the critical items to where they need to go in a timely manner.
Oh, wowza, thank you. Thank you very much for enabling. Because I think that's how I could, if someone was to ask me for summing it all up, you've enabled, the healthcare workers to do what ought to be done on the ground. So thank you very much for that. Alrighty, I wish we could go on, so much to ask, so much wealth of knowledge and experience from you guys. Thank you very much for your time and for sharing the knowledge and for being a partner in the Mandela Washington Fellowship. UPS plays a very big role, and please continue to do that, for the coming years. We want to, yes, and that's on behalf of the fellows, the alumni, IREX, and the US State Department. Thank you for this platform, ladies. Do you have any parting remarks you want to share?
I think, Chao, I thank you so much for the opportunity. I would love to tell to all the fellows, you're not alone. You're part of a community, and we're all working together to make it through this crisis, learning a lot of good lessons, but also understanding the power of community and the power of working together. So we definitely, I want to send that message, because that has been the one lesson that we have taken through the crisis, and we continue to grow together, and so that will be my message. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Chao.
Yes, and just to build on that, Luisa is our beacon of positivity in our team. So just building on what she was saying, don't lose faith, because the fellows and the ventures that you're embarking on, or the businesses you're trying to build, or the efforts that you're trying to see through to completion. There might be a new normal. There might be a different way you might have to go about it because of the changes that we're seeing in the world. But once the dust settles, you'll be well positioned to hit the ground running and keep things going. So don't lose faith. I have to sort of rejigger what it is you're trying to do, or the way you go about it, but it'll happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So all the best to the fellows in the rest of the course. Thank you for watching.